Do you need to know music theory in order to become a good music producer? Or can you succeed without it? In this video, I'll attempt to answer this question. If this is your first time here and you want to learn all about FL Studio and music production in general, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell as well. Before I can answer this, you first need to know what music theory is. It's basically a theory describing how and why music works, kind of like the way grammatical rules work for language, but it's not a strict set of rules that you must obey at all costs. Remember, music came first, and then came music theory. Back then, people soon discovered that there were certain combinations of notes that naturally sounded great together, and they set out to describe what was going on. This is what evolved into music theory. If you listen to music, then you have no doubt discovered that a lot of music tends to sound very similar, with the same chord structures and so on. Some songs are almost identical. While there's technically an almost infinite amount of note combinations that can be used, there's a limited amount of harmonies that sound really good, and therefore they tend to get used again and again and again. If you don't know anything about music theory, you still might be able to make great music. You might not be aware that you just made a major ninth chord with the fourth and the bass. You just know that these notes fit together and they sound good. Simply put, music theory describes how and why music works. There are some producers out there who have become hugely successful even without knowing anything about music theory at all. However, these are the exception and not the rule. Imagine that your car suddenly stops working. Even if you're not an educated mechanic, you might still be able to fix it, but it will be far easier if you know some theory about how an engine actually works in the first place. As with all things in life, whatever you do, you'll have a much better chance of succeeding if you have some basic knowledge to begin with. If you're struggling with your chord progressions, for example, then music theory can help you understand which chords work well together. Chord progressions tend to naturally resolve a certain way. Major chords tend to sound happy, while minor chords sound dark or sad. Knowing this stuff can help you write better melodies faster. You probably won't need to know how to write music accompaniments for an orchestra or anything like that, but knowing at least a minimum of music theory will be extremely helpful in speeding up your music making process. It will teach you about tones, rhythms, melodies, harmonies, scales, intervals, chords, and so on. It's generally much easier to get something to work when you already know what works and why. Many beginners make songs with notes that are not in the same scale, which causes a great deal of unwanted dissonance in their tracks. Then there's the ones who exclusively use the notes in the scale they're in, but still struggle because they don't know about accidentals. An accidental is a note that is not a member of the scale or mode indicated by the key signature, but can be essential when it comes to creating harmonies, tension, and resolve. This knowledge can be the difference between an average and great track. Music is all about emotion, and a great piece of music should evoke some kind of emotional response in the listener. This could be happiness, sadness, or whatever. Music theory explains what works and why, and can therefore be an extremely helpful tool when it comes to creating melodies and harmonies that evoke a particular emotional response in the listener. This might sound difficult, but it's really not. Music theory is actually quite simple. So, where can you learn this stuff? Well, you can always watch tutorials. However, there's also some very good books available. Two books that I've found very useful in the past are The Complete Idiot's Guide to Music Theory by Michael Miller and Dance Music Manual by Rick Snowman. This book does an excellent job of breaking things down and making it easy to understand. You get to know how to write effective melodies, chord progressions, etc. There's a whole chapter about harmony and counterpoint, which is essential knowledge for anyone seeking to enhance their skills as a producer. Even though it's been quite some time since I bought these books, I often find myself coming back to them for referencing. I can also strongly recommend the Dance Music Manual. It covers the essentials of music theory, but it also goes deeper into songwriting, how to use a compressor, synthesis, and those kinds of things. You can get them new or used on Amazon for just about $8. If you're serious about your music but don't know anything about music theory yet, then I strongly recommend that you check them out. You can find the Amazon links to these books in the description below. So, do you really need to know music theory in order to become a good producer? Well, it depends. Some people have perfect pitch, and some are able to make great music without knowing any theory at all. However, for most of us, some basic understanding of music theory will be extremely helpful, so the short answer is yes. I'm not saying that you have to know everything, but at the very least, you should know a little bit about scales and chords and such. This will make it much easier to write melodies and will most likely make you a better producer. I'd like to thank our Patreons for their ongoing support, and as always, if there's any specific tutorial you'd like us to make, or if you have a question, just let us know in the comments below. Also, make sure to check out the links below if you need feedback on your music, mixing, mastering, and so on. Thanks for watching.